Hey, I'm Zach.
And I'm Jesse.
Want a cold one? We have a product for you. Next, announce review. Or do we have a product for you? Let's get into it, Jesse. Okay. So this is made by sherryindustrial.com. It's the only brand I've seen that makes a Model 3 and Model Y trunk refrigerator. The one we have here is for the Model 3. The Model Y one is deeper. And before we even get going on this, since I think price is the big question on this product, the Model 3 version is $599 on Amazon. The Model Y version is $699, although I just saw it with a $200 coupon. So it's actually cheaper than the Model 3 version.
So this is $600.
$600. So I think we should go through kind of its stats first, and then we're gonna do the pros and cons and let you decide whether you think it's for you.
So this goes in the sub trunk of your Model 3. So
sub trunk?
So if you open up the trunk, then there's like that little flap and you pull on that and you open.
Oh, I always forget about that.
So that area, which
That's great because that doubles the size of your trunk. That's awesome.
Kind of. Okay, so they also ship it with this, which is a replacement for the one that Tesla sent with your car. It is, so you know how basically the sub trunk cover on your Tesla.
Oh, you take that out and you put this in.
You put this in.
Oh, this one has holes.
Because it needs to let the heat out from the refrigerator. So the way that refrigerators work is they take the heat from your cold items and they're pumping it out, and then they have to pump the heat out somewhere.
Okay. Can I just ask a question though? Yeah. When I fill up my trunk full of junk, which it's always full of, won't these holes get blocked?
Yes.
So I don't have the use of my trunk anymore?
No. There's a space behind here, about 8 inches or so.
That I can use.
That you could use. Maybe it's a foot, you know. So you have some room right behind the seats, but you can't cover any of this because otherwise it will get too hot and it'll shut off.
Doesn't that defeat the purpose of putting it in the sub trunk?
Uh-huh.
Well, why don't you just put this in the trunk then if you're gonna throw away all that space, and then at least you'd be able to have the sub trunk full of stuff?
I think because it sounds like a really good idea.
Oh, but when you put it into practice, it's not as great.
This is kind of the implementation of this product, and maybe how this whole design is flawed from the beginning.
But talk to me about, okay, so you want to get a drink out right now here at a rest stop.
Okay.
How do you do it when this thing is...
So the way that I have it oriented now is how it would be in my car.
Okay.
And so in my Model 3, normally the platform here has a little tab that you can pull on.
Why is the handle over there?
The handle's over here. So normally in my car, I could just pull it up like this, right? And access things in my sub trunk. Here, the handle's here, and then this comes up.
And it blocks you.
And then I can't.
So you have to take this out every time you want to get a drink?
You have to then take it out all the way, and then you can open the door, which is facing in the correct direction.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and now I can reach in here. There's a light, which turns on automatically.
Let's talk about how much space you have.
Okay.
So in this model, the Model 3 version, you have 21 quarts of storage. We're showing you some items that we put in there, some random, what we think are general use items. So it holds 21 quarts worth. I think the problem is that I was picturing that all the space was usable, and so I was really surprised at how little I could put in it.
Well, you have to think about insulation, because in order to keep stuff cool, you need some insulation.
Yeah, it's 1.7 inches or 45 millimeters of insulation, so it's well insulated.
And then you need a compressor.
Oh, right, so that whole area is gone.
So the whole refrigeration thing has to happen somewhere, and it's this whole side.
So let's talk about the fact that they said that you could take items that were 50 degrees Fahrenheit or 10 degrees Celsius, put them in here, and half an hour later, they would be -4 degrees Fahrenheit or -20 degrees Celsius. And I was excited about that, so we tested it. And in our testing, in half an hour, very little cooling took place.
Yeah, it's really slow. It doesn't take half an hour to do that amount of cooling. It takes like hours.
Yeah, in our testing, it took about 4 hours to do that. The problem is if you're putting something in that you need to quickly get cold or stay cold, it's gonna take longer than you hoped.
Right, so I mean, if you went somewhere and you picked up a couple of drinks off of a shelf and they weren't cold, and you put them in here and you wanted things to be cold, they're not going to be.
Right, it would take 4 hours.
Yeah.
The good news is it doesn't use a lot of electricity. So there's two modes. There's eco mode and max mode. In max mode, it's 35 watts of energy, and that's not all the time. It cycles on and off like a regular fridge. So you did some calculations as to how long this could run off of the long-range Model 3 battery?
12 weeks. And that's if it was drawing continuously. That's if you left the door open.
Wow.
So, and that's also assuming that the inverter is 100% efficient and that there's no other losses. But this uses a negligible amount of power. You are not going to see a range hit with this.
That's great.
At all. I was expecting to see like I mean, it's a refrigerator. You expect it to be using a lot of electricity.
No, it's
it
very
totally doesn't. They went very efficient. I appreciate that. I think that was really smart.
The build quality is really nice. I love how the door really feels nice when it closes. It opens nicely.
There's a light.
I really like the handle quality.
Yep.
So a lot of it they did really well.
There's a couple of other things. One is that there's actually a computer built in here. So there's a screen.
That's a little LCD screen.
LCD screen. You have some buttons so you can adjust the temperature. You can adjust some settings. So this is smart enough to not kill your car. So this is going to be running off of the 12-volt battery in your Model 3. And the 12-volt battery is getting topped up off by the DC to DC converter that's built into the car, which is getting its power from the large high voltage battery pack. So what this is going to make sure happens is that the 12-volt battery in your car never dips below a certain level to where you wouldn't be able to say where it would brick the car.
I see.
So this doesn't run so much that it would kill it. It's monitoring the voltage as it's drawing, which is really, really nice because you will never have your car killed by this thing.
That's great.
The other thing that this does is it prevents the compressor from overheating and like catching on fire.
That's good.
And that sounds really good, but you know what? Let's just get into the pros and the cons because I think that'll cover most of what we're talking about here.
All right, let's be nice to it and do the pros first.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
I'd say a pro is that there's no ice involved. Normally, to keep things cold, you need to go to the store, buy ice. Here, no ice. Nothing's going to get soggy. No water to pour out.
Yeah, so I mean, you could store sandwiches, you could store a meringue, like stuff that would normally dissolve in a cooler. You could store in here quite comfortably.
You don't have to take up all that extra space with the ice, so that's good.
And it's lighter.
I think a pro for me would be that the Model Y version of this, which holds 35 quarts, is an even better value, especially with that $200 coupon. And so the Model Y version would be the one I would buy if I had a Model Y, because this to me is too small.
Okay.
I guess I fit a con in there. Another pro to me is the variability of temperature. The fact that you can set it to -0, sub-zero temperatures, but if you don't need that, you can set it to whatever temperature you like.
So that's good for both ice cream and cold cuts, or ice cream or cold cuts.
I like that you can theoretically run this for long term, right? You can run it for days or even weeks without having to fiddle with it. Like you said, for some reason, I thought that the Model 3 had to go into some setting, like a camp mode setting, but you said basically it's good to go. Just plug it in and it keeps running.
Yeah, and because it has such a low wattage draw, you're not going to notice this on like a long camping trip or something like this. Unless you're going for weeks and weeks at a time, this is not going to be a meaningful power drain. You're probably going to lose more power from Sentry mode.
And yeah, to wrap up with the pros, I just think that it was great that they came up with a way to make this run on such low wattage. But now let's jump to the cons. And I feel like that list's a little longer. All right, the big elephant in the room is expense. You can do the same thing with a $20 cooler and some ice. So to me, spending $600 is just way out of my price range. I think we talked earlier, I said, if you're walking down the aisle of a store and you saw this at X price, what would that price have to be where you said, well, that's really a good value?
About $150,
I think you're right.
In that range.
Yeah, I think for 150, that's a really good value. But for 600, I just think for most people, it's a luxury thing that you don't need.
$600 is what you could spend on like a refrigerator for your home.
Right.
$150 is closer to like a mini fridge that you buy for a dorm.
Exactly.
So
that's what this is.
That's what this is, only smaller.
And in fact, my hack is you could get a dorm fridge, put it in the back with a power inverter, and have a $50 solution.
They would be a higher power draw, but yeah.
Another con to me is the unreliable part. So you tested it for weeks, and you said that occasionally it'd come out and it would just be off.
It would be beeping. So it'd be telling me, but if I'm not in the car to hear about it, I won't know.
Yeah, but you have an app.
I do have an app, which is another con to me. The app is Bluetooth. Okay, so that's great. I don't have to plug in anything to connect it to my phone, but it doesn't connect to, a cellular network.
So as soon as you're like 30 feet away from the car, it no longer is communicating with you.
Right.
And so if you go for a hike or whatever,
you're not going to know that you're going to come back to melted ice cream.
I see.
And that leads me into another thing, which is this will shut off if the temperature gets too high on the compressor, which means that basically if there's anything covering the thing, it'll turn off. It'll also just turn off in general. Because if your car gets hot, which it does in the summertime, then the heat is going to have no place to go, and the compressor is going to get warm, and it's going to shut off, and it doesn't reset itself.
Oh, well, I mean, it makes sense why it doesn't, but I see how that's a problem because now your ice cream cake is melted.
Everything is now warmed back up. Or if the 12 volt starts to go lower, even if the car brings the 12 volt back up, it still is going to have a problem. So that means that whatever you had in here is now warm.
I think another huge con to me is the loss of space. So the fact that you've now just thrown away your entire trunk, even though it seems like it's great that it fit in your sub trunk, is just stupid.
It would honestly make more sense to put this in the trunk
And use the sub trunk.
use the sub trunk.
Right.
You'd have more room.
Right. Another con to me is that one of the benefits of something cool in the car is while you're driving, you reach back and you grab a cold one, and now you have a cold one.
Not a cold one,
Oh, right, a non-alcoholic cold one.
a cold beverage.
So in this case, you would have to stop the car, like at a supercharger, open the trunk, take that thing out, do a bunch of maneuvers just to get a cold drink.
Yeah.
And that just seems silly.
Another con is you may have noticed this cable here. Why is it so long, I hear you ask?
Yeah, why?
Because the only 12 volt cigarette lighter in the Model 3 is in the front console.
But I thought there's one in the trunk.
No, you're thinking of the Model Y.
Oh.
So in the front console next to the driver. So you have to run a cable all the way from the sub trunk. And by the way, this cover that they came up with doesn't have a slot for the cord to come out of.
Oh, is that why it's got a little mark on it?
Yes, and so that's going to destroy the insulation at some point.
Wait,
I
is
don't know
this
when.
why when I got in the rear seat of your car the other day, I tripped on a cable? This is the cable I
This is the
tripped on?
cable. So now you could, they do have the cable long enough to where you could run it probably around the outside, like under some trim. So if this was a more permanent solution for you, you could do that. But this also means, I don't know if you can see this here, but they've crunched the cable down.
Oh, yeah.
Because when I close the center console, which is where this lives, it crunches down on the cable, and there's no way. This is more of like a fault that I have with Tesla. Why do you have a 12 volt thing there in a very useless space? And they had to do something, so this is what they did. But that's annoying. I also can't have the tray that's normally in my center console. So all my lip balm is now gonna be somewhere else. I gotta put it in the glove box or something. It's annoying. So
That is annoying.
This part's a little annoying.
So again, this would be better in a Model Y where it just plugs right in the trunk.
I think so. And it also makes carrying it a lot harder too.
Another con to me is how long it took for things to get cold. I mean, if you put in some drinks and you want them to be cold in half an hour like it says it would do, it doesn't do it.
No.
So that's a bummer.
Yep.
The app is not helpful. So if you're gonna have an app, make it well written and make it work well, but this isn't that helpful. I don't like the fact that the Model 3 version at least only has 21 quarts of storage. It's a lot of money per quart to be spending on storage.
Right.
And I really don't like the fact that it doesn't reset. So I mean, a lot of times you can put medicine in here, and if it doesn't reset and your medicine goes bad, that's a huge problem.
Right.
Or if you're carrying something like an ice cream cake or something to grandma's house, and then you get to grandma's house and here's your ice cream milk thing.
I mean, but really though, if this isn't a reliable refrigerator, then what can you actually store in it? And the answer is drinks, which is great, but only non-spoilable drinks. I can't store milk, right? It has to be this. Non-spoilable snacks that you still want to keep cold. But you don't want to get to inside a car on a hot sunny day temperature.
Right, so like even fruit, as soon as it gets warm, you can't, even though you cool it again, it's probably not good.
It's not the same. I'm trying to think of like a processed food that can stand getting warm. Like I'm trying to think of the most processed food I can. Like even a fruit roll-up melts when it gets too hot. So,
well, and look, this is where I want to leave off with you guys. It's obviously subjective. Maybe for some people this is the perfect item. In the comments, let us know whether you think that this is worth it, or whether you'd go, the route I would go, which is a cooler with some ice. Because I feel like, as Jesse was saying to me earlier, you could get the nicest cooler, like a Yeti cooler for like $200, put $20 worth of ice in there, and you've got way more usability space-wise than this. And then you can reuse that cooler. So I don't know, this to me seems like one of those ideas that sounds great.
Sounds
you
really
use it
good.
on your first trip, and then you're like, that wasn't that great, and then it sits in the garage or the basement.
right, and you spent $600 on it. So that's kind of what I am feeling of just like, you know, all this work to put it in the sub trunk.
Well, because a lot of times we'll get a product and we're just itching to use it more and more.
Yeah.
We have this product, you've been using it for weeks, and you're like, I'm gonna get this out of my trunk. So that tells you a lot.
I mean, I just want to talk about use cases. just for a second. I mean, there's the road trip example. So this means you can't store much in your trunk, and if anything shifts back, I don't know if, it's really suck if Tesla's like had a lot of acceleration and could shift the things in your trunk over the thing that you can't get things on top of. Can't store a lot. Maybe you're storing everything in the front and the rear seats. Okay, all right, sure.
So then you just junked up your car.
So you're a couple, right? And now your car is all junky. That's fine, you're on a road trip, sure. And whenever you want, you can get a drink, but you have to park the car first. So you're on the highway. What are you gonna pull over? Or you go to the rest stop where they already have cold drinks.
Yeah, and another thing is a lot of times you drink half the drink and then you want to put it back in the fridge to keep it cold, and you can't.
So let's go to the other example, camping. This is much better. The car is always parked. You can always walk over to it, open the trunk, and access the thing.
You know what I think I would actually do if I owned this?
What?
Is I would strap it into the rear seat. Because then I could use this, I could use my trunk.
You could buy the Model Y one even if you had a Model 3.
Right, I mean, that...
But honestly, we've bought a different one. We've bought a cooler with a Peltier cooler on top, and it won't get to sub-zero temperatures or anything.
It was way cheaper.
And it won't chill the drinks any faster, but it was way cheaper.
And you know what was nice about that one? We could carry it into the hotel room or into the cabin, whereas with this, you're very unlikely to want to heft this in for just the few drinks that are in it.
I agree.
So I think that for me, this is a thumbs down, but again, it might fit your use case. So let us know
what it is, because if you can think of a really good use case, again, remember that it's unreliable, but just tell us what it is, because I'm curious to know. So thank you so much for watching Now Let's Review.
Yeah, please comment down below things that you'd like us to review, because that's what we're here for on Now Let's Review. And don't forget to hit the bell icon so you don't miss our upcoming episodes, because who knows what we're going to review next on Now Let's Review.